right. For everybody that's joined, welcome to the meeting.
Hey, Colby.
Hey, Cynthia.
Hi.
So, Cynthia, I think we're just going to turn it over to you.
Okay.
I will make you a co-host here.
Okay.
And that should give you all of the, hi, Janice.
Okay, Janice is here. She's going to be taking notes.
All right.
Just a moment here while I pull up something. Just give me a moment here because I'm doing something here in the middle of all this. You know,
sure.
my job has gotten infinitely harder since I now take on all of the West region. I have, or not West, but Southwest region.
Southwest.
So I have both regions 2 and 8. So I have about 60 people to keep track of. So it's sort of like asking the dean to do a meeting. You know how that goes.
Right. Well, I really appreciate your volunteering to lead this meeting. So thank you so very much.
So I did share some documents out with the folks who volunteered so graciously to participate in this meeting. And I actually have some better documents to share with you that I will probably have to do later because I can't seem to juggle and keep track of emails very easily these days. So my agenda is to start kind of a little bit of introduction. Of course, myself and Janice has agreed to be co-host. I see Karen out there and Dan Hermes. Thank you for joining, Craig, as well. Janice has, like I said, agreed to take some notes here. Ryan out there. Amber Yoder, I see a Joshua, Josue, yeah. Chelsea. Jaylene, boy, we got a good bunch of people here. Raphael, Andrew Conlon, Brittany Johnson, Greg Anderson, and of course, Colby, you are there. Jim Wygant, welcome. Thank you for showing up, and Greg Anderson. So thank you all for coming here. My main goal on this discussion session here is to develop a minimum of 5 primary focus research topics for cooperative research that we'd like to see done in the West. So I'm looking at what we did last year, and that is that I have dust, soil health, permafrost, data delivery and citizen science, and ecological scales as being the 5 ideas that were by rank. And I wanted to know if those are continuing to be important to us or if we have other ideas. And so I'm basically going to throw out some ideas that are coming from NRCS as being important for what NRCS and the Soil and Plant Science Division has decided. And some of those suggestions here, I'm going to throw them out, is the soil
Cynthia,
health gaps.
Can I jump in for just 1 minute?
Please.
I just wanted to frame this is that the idea behind this particular committee is that the ideas generated here and identified as priority research areas for the West region will be provided to the NRCS and will eventually be decided on for their RFPs that they will deliver next year. So these are the potential topics that could, no guarantee, but could potentially be put out to receive proposals for funding.
Yes.
So we're going to have an opportunity to shape what research funding might be available.
Thank you for that explanation. I do tend to get kind of focused a little bit on right away what we're doing. And what I'd like to share with everybody after we're done, I'll share all of the documents I have so that you can think about this a little bit more if you need to. I'm sorry that I didn't get this done in advance. It's been a horrifically busy summer for me with COVID, so I'm a little overwhelmed, but I wanted to give you guys a chance to listen to what NRCS is thinking is important. So this gives you kind of a heads up as to what might be more fundable. I also went through that document that we had of past research efforts that showed what we thought was important in the past and what we funded. There was a lot of projects that were listed in that past research funding from 2008 through 2016. And I went ahead and grabbed the keywords out of the project titles and put those up in a list. And I will provide that list as well to show what we were looking at in the past and how it kind of evolved. So what our division is thinking about these days is primarily soil health and what's called soil health gaps, which are gaps between what we know a present condition of a soil ecosystem is and what it could evolve into. This really does kind of go along the lines with ecological site, state, and transition models that we look at. So soil health gaps is important. The keywords you've been hearing lately are dynamic soil survey, which is along the lines of the soil, water, and landscape relationships. The title hydropodology kind of comes to mind here, including that soil and water storage in water limited environments. There hasn't been a lot of work done in the West on this, but we know it's very, very important. Another key item is edaphic condition that falls underneath this dynamic soil survey, the relationship of the soil with the living environment. And then on a more applied basis, the specific conservation planning and land management needs that could be divulged by using dynamic soil survey information. A third item that's kind of becoming more important because it's getting more funding lately is human altered landscapes and the suitability for urban and peri-urban farming. And this is, growing food in places that we don't traditionally grow food, using the brown spaces around a city to kind of develop more city-centric farm-to-market opportunities for urban population. A topic that's come up that's of interest in the East, of course, and along the Gulf Coast, but is also very interesting for the West, is subaqueous mapping, coastal zone mapping for the Western states. What kind of blue carbon storage, what kind of ecological services are provided by those aqueous fringes. And this can be not only the ocean, but it can be lakes, it can be saline lakes, it can be playas. So there's a lot of opportunity with that as well. And then of course, the topic that nobody wants to say by name, but it always is on our mind, is climate change and resilience and resistance. So those are some of the suggestions that I have on a list here that I thought maybe could start the conversation. And so I'd like to hear from other folks now as we go along and to get an idea of what you think is important for this research moving forward with NRCS and the Cooperative Soil Survey. What can we do now to move the needle towards the Western states' needs for research? So
There,
just unmute your mic.
in the chat box.
Okay, we got 4 things here. What was the top priority from 2018 and what was this project funded in 2019? I wish I had that information. I was kind of hoping that Sky Wills would be here, and Sky is here. So Sky, maybe you can chime in.
I led that committee.
I was muted. Go ahead, Colby.
I just want to say the top priority was dust. I was actually one of Craig's ideas. And
that
so
was funded, right?
yeah, there was an RFP set out for that.
Okay. All right, and we have blue carbon, big issue with the coastal zone. Yeah, Sky, if you want to elaborate a little bit what you've.
Oh, just that Brittany posted that it would be neat to tackle blue and teal carbon. And I'm going to admit, I don't know what the distinction to teal carbon is. But blue carbon is a big issue. That's a coastal zone group. There's a coastal zone focus team. They're very interested. And it was, so last year we took the national priorities for funding for research. And then, I mean, we also invest our own like NRCS impetus. We do have a small research staff, and these define our goals as well. And so there are 3 funded projects and then an overarching effort by the Soil and Plant Science Division to do some blue carbon stock and change calculations and just sort of landscape assessments across the eastern seaboard. And we'd really like to see some of those move west.
Teal is freshwater systems.
Oh, yeah. So there is an
Cool.
effort in the Great Lakes to do some of this. I guess I hadn't heard it called teal, but they're working on it. So there's a lot of, yeah, there's a lot of research, new stuff, cool stuff going on in that area.
Okay, so blue is considered the salt water and teal is considered that freshwater
Apparently.
system. Okay, that's good. I learned something today. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, Sky is our national leader for research, and so I really like to hear what she's saying because she has her finger on the pulse of all the regions. And Ryan is asking here, then in the West, that focus would be on riparian and wetland soils. And
It could
yes,
potentially be, but I mean, it would specifically that for blue and teal, it's in standing bodies of water. But yeah, there is still an interest in wetland soils.
I
For
know
many
in some
reasons.
I know in some of the other discussions that I heard a little bit, some of the blue carbon or at least coastal zone soil survey, they were thinking sort of more of Alaska and you know, maybe parts of Hawaii.
That's a good point.
okay, does anybody have any other ideas that I didn't go over in that little idea suggestion? So if okay, so I please forgive me because I'm not familiar with this program. So if I share this screen, share my screen, you could see what I'm thinking about?
So while Cindy's working on that, I will just say I've been the national leader for research for like a couple months now. So I'm not totally up on everything, but I've heard what the other regions have said, and I know how we funded things in the past, and I know what our proposed funding and positions that we're hoping to hire are. This is your guys' meeting, so it's my job to sit back and listen to you, and you guys tell us what you want. But if there's anything you want to know about what we're doing, just ask. Take it away, Cindy.
All right. Can you see that screen that I shared?
Yeah, I can see it. I think
It's an agenda that I have at the top.
Yeah, Research Needs Committee.
Yes. So there's what I had that I kind of told you folks about. So if I'd like to hear more discussion then in the background, if you agree with what things I've had, or let's take some of the items off and replace it with something else.
Yeah, I have a comment. I think the list is lovely. I wish we could, develop RFPs for all of them, but we as a group have to come up with one priority. And I think one of the really unique aspects of the Western US is the expanse of arid and semi-arid environments. And one of the things that we've come across in trying to study arid system wetlands is the real lack of information. Besides the one chapter that Janice Bettinger wrote in that little yellow problematic book, I mean, there's very little information out there on wetlands in the arid West. And so I'd like to see that explored more. Chelsea Duval, who's on the call now, she's studying iron monosulfide formation. I can't see who else on the call, but I'm sure there's some of our other NRCS collaborators. So I think that's an area that would be really interesting, just diving into the biogeochemistry of those systems.
Does anybody else have some topics that they think we're lacking, that we need to be picking up and doing a little bit more about?
Well, I think we're all working on it, but one topic I might be interested to address would be along these lines of how do you teach soil survey in a virtual environment, or not soil survey, how do you teach soils in a virtual environment? You know, or are there new tools and technologies that we can use to increase our effectiveness as educators and get the message of soils out there? Maybe wrapped into one of these other topics.
That's a very good topic. I'm a member, well, actually I'm a co-chair of the training focus team for the Soil and Plant Science Division, and it is just amazing, you know, the resources that we have to use and the resources that we have available, that we can put together coursework if we had more money to do it, if we realize that it is a really key component to what we need to do in the future, especially since it appears that our division is the training pool for just about everybody else to pull the guppies out of and take into their organizations. We have a lot of people that get trained and then go elsewhere. So we want to make sure they have a very thorough and full training. But also there's the need, when people come into into the government as a soil scientist, they need to have those 15 credit hours of soils. And so you guys teaching is really critical for us to get good folks that then we can further train. And it would be better if we pooled our resources and worked together more to do a lot more cooperative training efforts between our agency and academic units. And I know that's what Dr. Limbo wants to see more of in the future as well, is to see what's going on and to link us more closely in our efforts so that we're not, I don't know, doubling our efforts, but we don't have enough money to do all that. So it's like, if we could share our resources, I think we'd go a lot farther.
Yeah, so to echo Colby's comment, I absolutely agree. And I think that we should share our resources, just like you said. It's almost like we need a subcommittee, like an immediate emergency subcommittee for virtual teaching, because I'd love to, I mean, I know that tomorrow's sessions will be recorded, these virtual field trips, and I'm gonna watch them very closely to see if I can use them in my classes this fall, because we're all scrambling. But in addition to virtual education, and I just think of the student body in general, I don't know if this is the place, but if this isn't the place, then where would be the place to discuss issues of diversity in soil science, or the real challenges that we have with our soil science community and the lack of diversity. I don't know that the Research Needs Committee should be the funding agency of that, but at least have something within the RFP that ensures that the researchers are focused on, you know, considering diversity in our field.
Well, it's certainly including the statements that that not, maybe not preference, but we certainly smile upon those efforts of including the 1890s schools, or the traditional the colleges that serve tribes or the Hispanic community. We try to do that within our agency to recruit young people into our agency by the Pathways program, and trying to go into those schools and share our knowledge and share some experiences so that they know where to go. And it's a little bit more incumbent upon us, I think, in the future to be even more outgoing with that information. There's a lot of people who want to be part of this science, but don't even know it exists or don't even know where to get the information or to get the training. So we try to do a lot of outreach when we can. It's interesting that some of our states kind of don't want their people doing as much work with non-farm bill customers, I might say. And then they can turn to the Soil and Plant Science Division to do more outreach, and the resource soil scientists that are in the state can do more of the educational work. And so we're actually looking for opportunities to get to the schools and do that kind of outreach. But yes, I agree, where diversity should be something we say a little bit more about in our RFP. Okay, can't type.
Hey, Cindy, I've got a comment I wanted to make real quick. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, hello, everybody. It's great to see Craig and Colby and Cindy, Karen, Janice. So this is going to sound extremely self-serving, and I don't know how much of this is, this research sort of committee ends up being like that. But I think like arid mountains are also a really important part of the West that is just sort of neglected. We tend to kind of stop at the, certainly some exceptions in this chat room here to that, like Craig's work, for instance, but we tend to stop at the base of arid mountains and not keep going. And they are just enormous, huge traps of dust, and there's a great deal of diversity of soils there. They have and hold some of the most precious ecosystems. I'm thinking of like the bristlecone pine ecosystem in the White Mountains, for instance. These are, really ancient and amazing ecosystems that are supported by the soil processes that are happening there, and we just know very, very little of what's happening there. So, in terms of, I happen to be, I took over sort of Bob Graham's project in the White Mountains, so that's why I'm saying it's a little bit self-serving, but certainly I think it's a really important area nonetheless. And if you look on a map of the basin and range, there's a lot of range in the basin and range. So
yes.
So yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there.
I agree, because after spending some time in Hawaii and learning about Hawaii ecosystems, I realized how they look at their landscape traditionally is what they call Mauka to Makai, which means mountain to the sea. So we look at it on a small scale in Hawaii, but it's no different on any of our landscapes in the West where we have mountains and wetlands and all that goes in between. And I think that goes back to sort of the sort of what we call benchmark landscapes. We call those, we've talked about benchmark landscapes, but we only have a few studies that have actually worked on them. And these benchmark landscapes they require what I would say a lot of cooperative work, because it's not just one area that you can work in. You probably need a little bit more teamwork to get some of the broad applications or broad understandings done of those landscapes. So I agree that those ecosystems, and NRCS, in our past mapping activities, we did tend to not look at those as closely. They were difficult landscapes. Some people would just say it's just a bunch of rock, and it was something that we minimized because it wasn't important to providing services to farmers or ranchers. But now that we're going back and filling in the gaps in soil survey, the need for for mountain landscape understandings is pretty strong. We need that, and we know that the gaps are there. And I think that other agencies, the Forest Service, BLM, also would like to see us pick that up and be more proactive in being well defined in our mountain landscape mapping units, rather than just calling them rock. They're actually growing things up there, or there's actually stuff going on up there just beyond it being rock and stony land. Yep.
Yeah, another idea related to that is just in terms of like the I think somebody mentioned the urban soils and urban human altered, human transported materials. You know, I know a lot of that work goes on in New York City and in that MLRA, and I'm on a project right now where we're doing work with them. But in the West, you know, there's just things are so resource limited, especially with respect to water, that any kind of urban, peri-urban pressures are really exaggerated in the West. And so along those lines, you know, I'm sort of in support of that too. I mean, like Karen said, I think all of these are great and love to fund and write an RFP for all of them. But anyway.
And again, I agree strongly with that as well, especially down in your neck of the woods there, Dan, because I've seen those, I mean, very vast areas that are basically human transported materials that have been rearranged and put in there so they can put orchards and then later houses on them. And Randy Riddle, who works out of the Templeton office, has been very interested. He's also the head of the urban focus team for the Plant and Soil and Plant Science Division. And he's very interested in the Western aspect of urban soils, which is far, I would not say far different, but different enough to be interesting in the sense of doing some funding for some research opportunities. And certainly as we get some more remote sensing activities going on here, and also using the portable XRF and trying to get some more technology involved in what we do in our mapping, we have a lot of opportunities. But there's an opportunity to kind of combine the benchmark landscapes in the West and incorporate a few of these what look like are very diverse things and pull them together. Wetlands are part of the broader landscape. Wetlands are related to mountains in the sense that the water comes down and comes into the lower areas. The peri-urban and urban environments often are environments that have more diverse cultural landscape as well. More people, different cultures, different ethnicities. So you see where it can kind of pull together, as it were. Cultural landscapes or benchmark landscapes can come together. But then again, I don't want it to be such a big melange of everything that we lose a focus.
I would put up there just a second what Brittany put in the chat about fire and soil response to fire, given the impact that's having currently with.
So I'm going to stop sharing right now on mine. There we go. And we want to put up chat. Let's see here. Okay. All right. There's a lot to take in here. Are we? Janice, are you keeping track of things for me? Okay. Because there's a lot of ideas, and we'll have to write up a little report. But Jim Wygand is saying, you know, the large tracts of Western lands planned for large-scale disturbance to create the renewable energy production. I guess I wanted to say something a little bit about that we've actually been approached by just individual landowners asking us, how is the climate changing underneath these solar farms? And also in California, yeah, the large scale, and Craig's writing this, yeah, the solar projects, we're actually putting out hobo arrays so that we can collect the soil temperature and moisture underneath the solar farm, and then also outside of those areas. And we're also doing that in orchards where they're tearing up and putting in these huge almond orchards out here in the valley in California. So this sounds like maybe this is a great idea. Craig, do you want to speak to that a little bit, or?
Well, just there are several folks here at the U of A I've seen give talks, you know, and I don't know if they coined this term, but this agrivoltaics, where they're under the large scale solar arrays, you have, you know, complete modification of the climate and soil climate below those panels. And so you can grow crops in areas that you may not otherwise be able to grow those crops, some of the leafy greens and things, under hotter conditions, given the modification of the climate underneath those. And so they're even going so far as to designing the panel arrays so you can fit a small scale tractor and run rows and things underneath the solar panels and get dual use out of that same landscape.
This is Jim. This is Jim Wigan. I'd also say too, there's another aspect to this, in that folks are also interested in how can we be recreating more natural environments, or restore more natural environments in the vicinity or underneath these solar arrays as well. So you could have an agricultural avenue, which is great, that's multiple, but then also, you know, focusing on ecosystem services to maintain biological diversity, for example, in a solar or wind turbine array. And actually, there are some folks at UC Davis that are working on this issue, is how can we be managing the soils for not just, you know, putting in concrete to support photovoltaic panels, but in this highly altered environment, how can we also be doing something to contribute to soil surface stability and also conservation of biological diversity by managing our soils perhaps more intensively?
Mm-hmm.
I know some places like in the Imperial Valley, they're around El Centro. A lot of that's going in that some of that farmland, people are upset locally, some of the farmers, about a lot of that going into solar farms to supply energy to large municipalities, but that's maybe an untapped resource sitting underneath those solar panels.
That's right, right.
Yeah, we've been talking about that for a while, and we've started to set up some monitoring projects just to be able to see what's going on. We're also interested in what's going on under the orchards, where we have those big orchards for farming. So the solar farms are just an additional opportunity. And I've also approached my regional ecological site specialist and talked to her about where would this go in the state and transition models, putting in these solar farms and altering the solar energy influx into those soils, into those landscapes. Can you actually put a state and transition in for that type of management? And should we be doing that? So I agree, that's a great topic. That's a nice key word there, a nice new word to add to the dictionary here, agrivoltaics. I love it. I know it's not always all across the West that this would be going on. I guess we have to kind of think about what's the bigger picture for all of the West. We're kind of focused a little bit more on the Southwest here. And this may not be something that is applicable up in Montana, for example, but it still could be.
Altered landscapes might be a phrase that could encompass some of these larger issues. So whether it's climate change, whether it's, you know, the microclimate under solar panels, et cetera, maybe that's something that can fit regionally.
What do you think about that, folks?
Fire would fit under that as well.
Yeah.
So altered landscapes on a mountain to basin or mountain to bottom transect.
Malka to Mackay.
Yeah.
Mountain to sea. mountain to water, I guess. Mountain to drainage. It's not always water that's there. It's, you know, the high point to the low point. And sometimes the high point is only a few feet higher than the low. But yeah, and I wonder in these altered landscapes also that you can also incorporate the carbon, the carbon aspect of this, because that's one word that keeps popping up over and over again in these high visibility projects that get funded, is something about carbon, whether it's to assist in carbon banking, carbon farming, whatever there is there, the carbon aspect.
This is Jim Wygant again. I also, it's a question that I have, and I don't have much information, but do we really know how carbon is adequately, how carbon is sequestered in desert soils? And my sense is that there is a lot of inorganic sequestration. And have we devoted adequate attention to how we might increase that inorganic sequestration? Most of, at least in California, when people talk about carbon sequestration, they're thinking about forests. But what exactly is the role of our arid ecosystems? And do they have a role that could be enhanced for sequestration?
That's interesting. Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, I really like that idea, Jim. I mean, we hear about, Chelsea and I joke about all the carbons of the rainbow, with the blue carbon, the teal carbon. I don't know all the colors of the carbon rainbow, but we joke about the tan carbon, the brown carbon, the black carbon, and then, you know, as an inorganic carbon is the white carbon. And yeah, I mean, it's there and it's locked up, but it's also really important and understudied. So I second that.
Yeah, I do as well, particularly some of the interactions of organic carbon and inorganics, and the efficiency that inorganics can actually contribute to sequestration of organic.
Okay, so I've got some good topics here. Now we've got the, you know, I've got wetlands in the arid West, arid mountain ecosystems, human altered landscapes, agrivoltaics, altered landscapes, carbon cycling. So probably our challenge now, we probably have some more ideas, but we probably have to kind of think about what do we want to do with our diversity of ideas. And don't think that I haven't left out the thing about virtual teaching and challenges of diversity, because I think that in any RFP that comes up, we should include some aspect of training and diversity in an RFP, some aspect like the National Science Foundation does for its RFPs, to include some aspect that the investigator is going to do that will involve that aspect of teaching, training, and diversity. So which one's our top pick here? Or have we actually kind of created parts of a whole?
So Cynthia, is there any way that we could create, you know, 2 sentences about each of these and actually, you know, let people vote via Google form so that people not here could also participate? I don't know, Colby, what was done in 2018? I know I missed that meeting and I was like chiming in, how can I get a vote? And it's virtual, so we probably have so many more people here this time, but.
We do.
Yes, we do have more people here this time. Basically what we did as a committee last time was came up with 4 or 5 ideas, those that were listed on Cindy's screen there, or document when she showed it. So we came up, I think, with those ideas, but then I actually went back to the entire conference and asked everybody just by a show of hands which of those were most important, and then it came up with that ranking. So that's how we did it last time.
So if I wrote this list up and I could give it to somebody who's a little bit more skilled in doing surveys, Colby, I might have to ask you to do me a favor there, to send it out and see if we can get everybody to respond, and then we can turn in a true ranking rather than just an opinion ranking based on the smaller group. I would much prefer to do that because I don't believe I have the lock on in this group on what we think is important. I'd like to ask everyone if we could to sound off. And some people, of course, don't feel comfortable doing it, talking over the Zoom meeting. But I certainly feel like they would say more if they were offered that opportunity. So maybe that's our next move.
Cindy, I have just a quick question. I noticed that on the last RFP that came out, the projects were, maybe not all of them, but many of them were incredibly specific. I was really surprised by that. It was like, oh, well, I either do that or I don't get funding,
I know,
or
right?
whatever. And so I don't know if that's good or bad. I mean, I guess it was good because it was like if you're doing a project that works on that, you have a good chance or something of getting funded. But it seems to me like from the NRCS perspective, you would want to make it kind of broader and just get the very best idea that comes out.
So let me explain a little bit about how that was put together. So I will tell you that there were some that didn't exactly meet what was asked for that did really well, but in the things we're asking for, I don't know. I mean, you could read them as very specific, but you could also read them pretty generally too. In the odd years, so this is the even year you're having your regional meeting. Next year, we will fund regional projects that'll be based on the recommendations that you make. Also next year, the recommendations you make will be forwarded to the research committee at the national level. And then they will make recommendations that will be recommended for funding the next year. And so for whatever reason, the committee last year made pretty specific recommendations and we followed those. And so if you think they're too specific, I would just, get involved at the national level, or at least poke people and say maybe you should back off. The other thing since I'm talking, I'll say a couple other things. The people who are really successful at these notice of funding opportunities, that's what we call them now, but the people who are really successful were in big multi-institution projects. We wanted to see, it's the Cooperative Soil Survey. We wanted to see that. And we wanted to see a true cooperation with NRCS and Soil Survey and a true use, either, to or from Soil Survey. Like you're using Soil Survey or you're producing something for Soil Survey. And so those were the things that were really successful. And yeah, we were pretty specific, but we got 30 proposals. So we had plenty to sort through. It wasn't, I don't think we were hurting for good proposals. We were maybe a little more limited than in some areas than I would have hoped, but we had a very good crop of proposals.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think it was a bad thing. It was just surprising to see it so specific for me anyway. But I'm happy to write my own RFP.
Yeah, that's great. What I'm actually doing is some of you are going to get assignments. Karen, can I have you write a couple sentences about the wetlands in the arid west that you proposed and send me an email with that in it? And Dan, you have the arid mountain ecosystems of these underrepresented landscapes. If you could send me a couple sentences, I'll put that together. Human altered landscapes in the West. I can put that one together. Agrivoltaics. And I would ask Craig if he could do that. Would that be okay with you, Craig? You comfortable writing a couple sentences about agrivoltaics and why that's an important thing under those solar farms? Maybe, I don't know, Jim, maybe you want to, Wygan, maybe you want to chime in as well on that. Okay. And carbon
Yes, I can do
cycling.
that.
Which one?
I can contribute to the agrivoltaic.
Okay, Jim.
Or ecosystem services as well. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. And carbon cycling in the soils. Who would like to do that in arid soils? Western soils. Because it is different when you get west of the Mississippi. Any takers for that one?
Well, I could give it a shot. I'm not an expert by any means, but I can, you know.
I'll do this. I'll do the human altered landscapes. I was going to say I could take a shot at that other one as well, but I'm probably not as good an expert as some other mineralogists out there.
I was going to suggest, do you want to include the, the solar farms as part of a human altered landscape? That could be either, it seems those two kind of go hand in hand.
Right.
You know, you're right. That's very true. So maybe that can blend together. So that takes us down to 4 main topics besides the overarching virtual environment teaching and challenges to diversity. Okay.
But maybe,
okay.
Maybe something that you could, maybe Sky's the person to ask this with the virtual teaching, just in general, our soil science community diversity challenges. Maybe that's something that's like of all the regions, it's overarching to the whole of the US. And I feel like there were a couple of those last year. Did that make sense, Sky?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic idea. I do think it sort of supersedes all of the regions. I would, at a minimum, make sure that that idea is in your notes and gets passed on to the National Committee. And when I see it in your notes, I'll remember and we'll discuss it. And I may take it to my leadership right now, actually, because it's a really timely idea.
Yes, very much.
I'm happy to write up something for that. As long, it's not that it's less important, it's like on different parallels of importance. It's like entirely important, but I don't want it to take the place of the potential hard soil.
Right. It seems like it seems like there is an initiative waiting for funding here that comes from a slightly different pot of money. And so maybe, well, I'll float that around and maybe we'll start looking for that.
So on that, this is Dave Linbo. Yeah, we have funded something like that previously. I guess it was Karen 2 years ago. So something like that can easily be brought through as a research. It can also be brought through the training focus team. Cynthia, I'm looking at you. So talk to the focus team leads, and they can present something up to us when we start looking at initiatives and start looking at funding. Remember, all funding is based on budgets, and I'm sure you all know what the federal budget looks like, what it probably will look like for next year. So just be aware of that. Anything that we do to fund one thing takes funding away from something else or redistributes it. But if it's a good idea and it's a good proposal and you can sell it, it'll be considered.
Yeah, we also have a diversity team in our division as well that's going to be charged with handling some of these deficiencies. I might contact the head of that committee as well, who's also a co-chair of the training focus team. So we're all kind of playing in the same playpen on these things. Okay, so I have 4 ideas. Karen's going to do the wetlands, and Dan is going to do arid mountain ecosystems. Craig is going to do the human altered landscapes, which will include the urban and peri-urban pressures plus the agrivoltaics. And Jim, if you want to be off the hook on this, I can do the carbon cycling in the western soils, if you'd like me to write that up. Unless you want something to say about it.
Well, sure, but if you want to take the first draft, then I would be glad to comment on that or elaborate it. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to have to give our folks a little time to do this, and so we'll put together our poll. And Colby, when would you like to send this out?
Well, the committee, I mean, the meeting ends on Wednesday. So perhaps, certainly by then, I don't know if we're just writing 2 or 3 sentences, perhaps that's not too much of a burden.
Maybe we can get it out tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, 2 or 3 sentences, perhaps that's reasonable. If you'll provide that, provide that document to me, I'll get it out to the whole committee and or the entire
Well, they're
conference
thinking
and then ask
about
for
it
feedback.
because once they walk away from it, people won't be thinking about it, and then it'll get lost. So if we do it right within the next 2 days, we'll get it done, and then we can provide that report back.
Sure.
So if I can get, okay, go ahead.
Just, I mean, we do have Wednesday afternoon. There's a brief time for all the committee reports. So if we could get some results back before then that would be something. There would be an opportunity that we could report on.
Right. If we can turn it out tomorrow morning and give you 24 hours, and then those of us in the background can pull up the results and then send it and set it down into the report. Does that sound good?
And I mean, Colby, if you're overwhelmed with putting on the whole, I mean, I realize it's virtual, but it still takes work. If you want me to put together a simple Google survey, I can do that once I get the document from Cynthia. Up to you.
That would be
That might be
delightful.
better.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, that's perfect, Karen. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay, so I think we're just a little over an hour at our meeting, and does anybody have some words they want to say in the background or more thoughts that we haven't covered?
Fire, it should fit in there somewhere. I mean, it's going to be huge. It's going on not just, in the arid West, but also you look at the fires in Siberia with the high temperatures and permafrost melting. I think, throughout the whole West, fire could be an issue. And I could take a stab at that one.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Janice. I appreciate that. I hate to leave our friend fire out. Not always friendly, but serves a purpose. So I appreciate that. And yeah, if you guys get those to me tomorrow morning, if you can just do this overnight and get it to me tomorrow morning, I will get the document set up to send to Karen. I probably won't sleep much tonight thinking about this, but I will make sure I'm up early so I can get this sent out in time for us to have a good solid 24 hours of polling for folks to chime back to us to let us know what they think. Okay? All right. Yes, thank you for thinking of that, Janice, and putting that together. We appreciate it. Sky, you have some things to say about recruiting for the research focus team.
Oh, sure. We, you know, it's cooperative soil survey research. We want everybody to be involved as possible. We have a very small staff, and our idea is to really spread research out throughout Soil and Plant Science Division and through all of our cooperators. And as part of that, we have a focus team called the Soil Research Focus Team. And we have had cooperators that have participated in the past. And it's just a way to stay involved and keep whatever your ideas and priorities and focus, instead of just doing it once a year for an hour or two, to have some input ongoing throughout the year. So we're recruiting members. The membership had kind of fallen off, and there are a ton of people. There's some people that are listed perhaps under old affiliations on there, but we're looking for some new involvement and new input, and if you would be willing to contribute, we'd really appreciate it. So just let me know if that's something you might be willing to do, or I might reach out to you and beg. So, you know, don't let me do that.
Okay, thank you, Sky. And thank you, everyone, for that's participated here, for chiming in and listen and contributing to the conversation that we have here. It is important for us to have a statement from the West that says what it is that we need to have in terms of doing research to help us understand our ecosystems, our soils, our plant environments better. So I appreciate folks who took the time out. I like that we have virtual meetings. I'm sorry that we didn't get to see each other in person. And I appreciate those folks who stepped forward to offer a little bit more service here in terms of writing up the main ideas and to get them out for the poll. So, all right. Any other final words that anyone wants to say? I'm looking at you all, and I appreciate, like I say, I appreciate seeing your faces. It's nice to see you. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye. Thanks, Colby. Thanks for the help.
You bet. Thank you.